Queen Lyris Thaler sealed the treaty with a synaptic pulse from her throne, the biocrystal interface humming as it bound her empire's fate to the coalition of outer systems. The chamber's vaulted expanse, woven from living neural vines that pulsed with the court's collective anticipation, fell silent save for the faint echo of data streams integrating across the void. The Thalrin Empire accepts, she declared, her voice a regal cascade, laced with the unyielding timbre of divine right. Crucial imports, rare isotopes for her fleet's drives and neural stabilizers for her people's longevity, would flow again, staving off the slow starve of isolation. But the price etched itself into her mind, a symbolic consort from the human fringe worlds, a gesture to placate the coalition's insistence on interspecies unity. She rose, her iridescent scales shimmering under the throne's auroral glow, and gestured to the attendant neuralists. Prepare the human envoy, Jonah Hale. Install him as ceremonial consort per the treaty's clause. Let the palace protocols commence without delay. Whispers rippled through the court like disrupted synapses. Doubt, curiosity, the first faint fractures in propriety. Lyris felt them tug at her awareness, her biosynaptic crown amplifying the undercurrents. But she held her posture absolute, a bastion against the tide. In the accreditation hall, beneath the scrutiny of a dozen palace arbiters, Jonah Hale stood unmoving as the neural scanners swept over him. Lyris observed from the elevated dais, her secondary senses linked to the lead arbiter's feed, allowing her to parse every nuance without descending into the fray. The human was unremarkable at first glance. Compact frame clad in the coalition's stark diplomatic grays, dark hair cropped short, eyes steady as unyielding stone. Thalrin protocols demanded submission to full synaptic mapping, probing for deceit, loyalty overrides, or hidden augmentations, a process that left even seasoned envoys trembling, their nerve clusters firing in protest. Yet Hale endured. The first probe lanced in, a web of bioelectric tendrils questing through his neural net, translating his primitive carbon-based thoughts into readable cascades. Arbiter Vren's frills quivered in surprise. He accommodates without resistance, no flinching, no chemical surge of fear. Lyris noted the anomaly. Humans lacked the synaptic ports her people bore from birth, yet Hale leaned into the interface, jaw set, breathing measured. Minutes stretched, the scanners delved deeper, cross-referencing his credentials against coalition archives, diplomatic postings, strategic advisories, a veiled record of operations in contested sectors. He multitasked seamlessly, answering verbal queries on treaty minutiae, while his mind withstood the probe's relentless churn. The supply corridors must remain neutral, he stated evenly, voice carrying no strain, to prevent escalation from either fleet dispositions. Lyris's crown tingled with the arbiter's growing unease. Thalrin endured such trials through disciplined neural partitioning, a rote mastery drilled from the cradle. This human simply persisted, his resilience a quiet force, adapting to the invasive rhythm as if it were mere discomfort. No arrogance in his posture, just professional discipline, like a soldier holding a line in vacuum. She suppressed a flicker of intrigue. Such composure hinted at depths beyond the ceremonial veil. The chamber doors hissed open, admitting Minister Kael Vassar, his robes swirling like agitated plasma. The succession minister's crest pulsed crimson, a physiological tell of barely contained ire. He strode forward, bypassing protocol with the audacity of long service, and halted before the dais. Majesty, this farce endangers the bloodline. A human consort? The court murmurs of dilution. Our neural purity compromised by alien flesh. Factions in the outer holds already stir, withhold ratification, expel him, and preserve the throne's sanctity. Lyris met his gaze, her own frills steady gold, projecting unassailable calm. Kael's flaw was ever his zeal for tradition, a moral anchor that blinded him to pragmatic tides, yet his warnings carried the weight of genuine loyalty. The court leaned in, synaptic links buzzing with shared tension. Your concern is noted, Minister, she replied, voice formal as etched crystal. The treaty secures our isotopes. Without them, succession means nothing amid crumbling fleets. The consort is symbolic, throne adjacent, not entwined. Kael's mandibles clicked sharply. Symbolism bleeds into reality, Majesty. The holds demand purity oaths. Grant this, and unrest festers into revolt. His words landed like barbs, the first overt challenge, factional shadows lengthening across the hall. Lyris felt the pull. Expel Hale, appease the purists, risk the coalition's wrath and import collapse, or press on, threading the needle of authority. She turned to Captain Alara, head of palace security, whose armored form loomed at the periphery. Monitor the consort closely. Full synaptic traces, behavioral logs, no physical contact beyond protocol. He remains, but under your gaze. Ilara's acknowledgement pulse thrummed affirmative, a subtle shift, not expulsion, but containment. Lyris preserved her command, adjusting the web without snapping threads. Kale's frills dimmed fractionally. Concession masked as calculation, but the minister bowed stiffly and withdrew, his retinue trailing like storm clouds. As the accreditation concluded, Hale passing without irregularity, Lyris authorized the next step, her decision a calculated concession. Convene a private hearing in the inner sanctum, verify his credentials personally, away from court eyes. The arbiters blinked in synaptic surprise. Such intimacy narrowed the public gulf, an administrative intimacy reserved for kin or proven allies. Yet necessity demanded it. The treaty's binding clause required unassailable proof, and whispers of forgery could unravel all. Hale was escorted to the sanctum, a chamber of woven neural silk that muffled external links, leaving only Lyris's crown as sentinel. She entered alone save for two silent neuralists, the air thick with the scent of ionized ozone from active interfaces. Jonah Hale stood at the protocol mark, hands clasped behind his back, expression neutral, yet alert. Up close, his presence was steadier than scans suggested. No Thalran grandeur, but a human solidity, eyes reading the room's subtle pulses with uncanny acuity. Envoy Hale, Lyris began, settling into the verification throne, its tendrils sinking to her will. The treaty demands your installation. Speak your credentials plainly. My arbiters will cross-link. She extended a probe tendril, not invasive but probing for consistency. He inclined his head, voice even. I am Jonah Hale, Coalition Envoy, assigned to symbolize unity. My service record, diplomatic attaché to the Verge Accords, strategic liaison in the Epsilon Drift conflicts. No hidden allegiances. As the neuralists linked, Lyris watched him juggle the query's layers, reciting dates, rationales, even anticipating follow-ups on drift tactics, where human improvisation had turned stalemates. We adapted blockade patterns by cross-referencing merchant flows with stellar drift, he explained, unprompted, connecting disparate data threads her analysts had labored over wrote. The neuralist's frills flared in tandem astonishment. Key patterns across domains without augmentation, one murmured through the link. Lyris felt it too. A human mind weaving novel links, resilient under dual pressures of probe and interrogation. No fatigue creased his features. Optimism underpinned his words, grounded in earned competence. Kale's objections echoed faintly, but here, in privacy, the alliance's fragility sharpened into possibility. You endure our ways with unexpected grace, she conceded, propriety cracking just enough for candor. The court tests us both. Hale's lips quirked faintly, not smirk, but shared understanding. Protocols are protocols, Majesty. We bridge them together, or not at all. The hearing concluded, verified credentials ironclad. Lyris withdrew the probe, the sanctum's silk dimming, a quiet human bound to her throne by imperial necessity, yet in his steady gaze she glimpsed an equal's resolve. Outside, factions stirred, but for this moment trust's fragile synaptic sparked to life. The grand atrium of the Thalran citadel thrummed with the resonant hum of synaptic choirs, their neural harmonies weaving through the air like threads of living light. Queen Lyris Thalra glided at the head of the procession, her iridescent scales catching the glow of 1,000 floating orbs, each pulsing in rhythm to the binding ritual's ancient cadence. Beside her, Jonah Hale matched her stride. Ceremonial robes draped over his unyielding frame, the human envoy bound now not just by treaty but by the court's unblinking scrutiny. Shouts erupted from the shadowed galleries above, conservative courtiers leaning over balustrades, their voices a jagged chorus. Impure alliance. The synaptic weave rejects this off-world flesh. Lord Vexar, his crest flared in defiance, pounded a fist against the rail, his neural aura spiking red with outrage. Protests swelled, a tide of dissent crashing against the ritual's sanctity, but Lyris held her gaze forward, her mandibles clicking softly in measured restraint. The binding demanded poise. Any crack would fracture the Empire's facade. Then, chaos sliced through the harmony. A figure vaulted from the throng. A cloaked assailant, blade gleaming with neurotoxin sheen, lunging straight for Jonah's exposed flank. Gasps rippled outward as the crowd recoiled, synaptic links flaring in panic. Lyris's instincts surged. Her own guards half a beat away, but Jonah moved first. His hand snapped out in a blur, fingers clamping the attacker's wrist with surgical precision, twisting just so, leveraging joint and momentum in one fluid arc. The blade clattered free. The protester crumpled, disarmed and pinned before the echo faded. Silence crashed down heavier than the choirs. Jonah released the man without flourish, stepping back as if reclaiming a dropped glove, his expression calm, almost apologetic. Lyris's primary hearts thudded once, sharply. Such economy of motion, untelegraphed, alien in its raw physicality. She quelled the flicker of intrigue, her voice cutting through the stunned hush like a decree from the void. "Luck favors the vigilant," she proclaimed, her tone laced with imperial dismissal. Eyes sweeping the courtiers. "Secure the intruder. The ritual proceeds." Guards swarmed, hauling the would-be assassin away, while whispers ignited. Human reflexes or scripted farce? Jonah met her glance briefly, a subtle nod acknowledging her cover, but said nothing. Humble, as if the feat were mere reflex. The procession resumed, choirs rebuilding their weave, but the air crackled with unrest. As they reached the binding altar, a crystalline spire throbbing with synaptic energy, Lyris signaled her vizier. "No reprisals," she murmured, her neural probe threading privately to High Arbiter Kale. "Inquiry first. Trace sponsors. Purity demands precision, not blood." Kale's aura pulsed assent, his flaw of overzealous loyalty tempered by her command. Harsh purges would only fuel the factions. Wisdom lay in roots, not branches. The ritual completed in strange splendor, Lyris extended a synaptic tendril, interfacing with Jonah's neural implant, the human tech bridging what biology denied. A jolt of shared intent flowed, treaty sealed in light and oath. Courtiers bowed, but their eyes lingered on Jonah, suspicion coiling like smoke. In the antechamber afterward, Lyris turned to her inner council, Jonah standing silent at the periphery. "Envoy hail," she said formally, propriety a shield against the cracking tension. "Pending inquiry, you are confined to ceremonial duties. Observe. Attend symbols. Nothing more. The court demands balance." Her words carried steel, masking the personal calculus. Trust sparked in the sanctum, but duty forbade favoritism. Jonah inclined his head, unflinching. "As you command, Your Majesty. I'll not complicate your weave." He withdrew with quiet grace, leaving Lyris to navigate the storm. Yet even as she dismissed him, a human resilience lingered in her thoughts, endurance without synaptic aid, holding poise amid peril. The complication crested at dusk council, holographic starfields projecting the Empire's fraying supply lanes. Lord Vexer paced, his voice a synaptic barrage. "This binding mocks our lineage. Alternatives exist." As if summoned, a transmission pierced the chamber. Prince Corvith of the neighboring Vesper Principality, his image materializing in regal hologram, crest arched in calculated allure. "Empress Lyris, Thalrin's trials need not bind to primitives. Vesper offers synaptic purity. Alliance through my house, fleets entwined without dilution." Murmurs rippled. Vexar's aura glowed triumph. Corvath's bid escalated the game. External powers sniffing weakness. Internal rivals emboldened. Lyris's mandibles tightened, political webs tightening around her throne. Corvath was no fool. Ambitious, militarily sharp, his principality's biofleets a genuine counterweight. Rejecting him outright risked war. Entertaining him undermined the treaty. She quelled the chamber with a raised tendril. "Prince Corvath, your interest honors us. Responses shall follow enquiries light." The hologram faded, tension unspent. Kale leaned in, neural whisper urgent. "He probes our fracture, Majesty." Conservatives whisper of his synaptic compatibility, pure Thalrin blood. Lyris's gaze drifted to the antechamber doors, where Jonah lingered in ceremonial vigil, reviewing ritual scrolls with patient focus. His earlier motion replayed in her mind. Not luck, but pattern. Reading the assailant's intent in micro-shifts, body language her synaptic senses had glossed over in the crowd's chaos. Humans lacked her empire's neural net. yet discerned subtext through instinct, emotional currents aliens navigated by probe alone. "Envoy hail," she called, voice carrying calculated warmth beneath formality. "Attend briefly. Observe conduct and strategy." Heads turned, Vexar's crest flattening in outrage. But she pressed on, signaling cautious toleration. Jonah entered without haste, taking a shadowed seat, eyes scanning the holomaps with quiet absorption. The Council delved into supply disruptions, raider swarms from the fringe nebula, pinching Thalran lanes, Kale projected vectors, synaptic models predicting road blockades. Standard phalanxes majesty. Exhaust them. Jonah shifted, unbidden but invited by her glance. "If I may observe," his tone humble, fingers tracing a secondary path on the holo. "Raiders feint bull carriers here, but patterns suggest decoys. Multitask scouts on these vectors, flank while they commit." Simple, yet his pattern recognition linked trade logs to nebula currents, a novel weave aliens approached through exhaustive sims. Vexar scoffed. "Human hunches? Our probes forecast certainties." But Kale paused, aura flickering as he cross-referenced. "Intriguing. Matches fringe reports we dismissed." Lyris watched Jonah closely, humble, not pressing, explaining only when queried, reasoning from their logistics. He added softly, "They overextend on fuel, hit the chains. No arrogance, just competence, bridging what her court siloed." Korvath's shadow loomed larger now, his pure alliance tempting the doubters. Yet Jonah's input sparked a collaborative thread, Kale adapting it with synaptic precision, projecting hybrid maneuvers. Success flickered, human creativity meshing with Thalran might. As the meeting adjourned, Lyris dismissed the council, lingering with Jonah. Propriety cracked just enough for personal connection. "Your motion today, not mere fortune." Her probe hovered, seeking subtext. He met her eyes steadily, a faint smile. "Training, Majesty. Humans adapt what we must." No boast. Resilience in the admission, optimism grounding doubt. Outside, factions churned, Korvath's envoys docking under truce banners. But in that chamber, trust synaptic deepened, human resolve intertwining with imperial steel. One motion had raised unignorable questions. Now, choices loomed that could redefine empires. Voices shattered the chamber's fragile accord like brittle crystal under claw. High Counselor Vexar, his iridescent scales flaring crimson with outrage, slammed a synaptic node against the obsidian table, sending neural pulses rippling through the linked assembly. "Human military integration? Absurdity. The Thalran fleet stands unbreached for centuries. Why dilute our synaptic precision with these soft-skinned interlopers?" Queen Lyris Thaler sat enthroned at the chamber's apex, her own scales a cool imperial azure, unmoving as the storm broke. She felt the council's collective unease thrumming through her biolinks, a web of loyalties fraying at the edges. Jonah Hale, her human consort, stood silent at her right, his posture straight but unassuming, eyes scanning the holographic projections of fleet dispositions without a flicker of the defensiveness she half expected. Outside, Korvath envoys had just docked under truce banners. Merchant Lord Kalis rose next, his guild frills quivering with calculated fervor, the air around him humming with the faint ozone of prophet projections. "Precision alone falters against Korvath blockades, Vexar. Our supply lines bleed, human vessels pierced their webs where ours stalled. Practical cooperation, not pride. Let Hale's people handle auxiliary patrols, our merchants gain escort, the Empire stability." Murmurs swelled, splitting along fault lines, purist admirals versus trade pragmatists. Lyris's gaze flicked to Jonah, noting how he tracked the debate's undercurrents. The subtle scale twitches betraying bribes, the synced nods of prearranged alliances, without interrupting. Her advisors pressed synaptic queries into her mind. Purge the merchants, rally the fleet. She silenced them with a pulse, letting the fracture expose itself. The discord spilled into the grand esplanade beyond, where the Alliance parade assembled under vaulted spires. Thalran honor guards in synchronized phalanxes marched to synaptic rhythm, banners of treaty silk snapping in the recycled winds. But chaos erupted mid-formation. A merchant flotilla's hover platform stuttered, cargo drones plummeting toward the ranks below. Shouts pierced the air as guards scattered, synaptic links overloading with panic feedback. Lyra strode onto the overlook, Jonah at her side, her voice a blade through the din. "Stabilize! Divert power cores! Now!" But the platform captains floundered, their rote protocols jamming under cascade failure. Jonah moved before she could signal, slipping past protocol with quiet efficiency. He vaulted to a nearby console, fingers flying across the alien interface. Symbols he'd mastered in weeks, not months, adapting human pattern logic to Thalran flux relays. "Cross-link the auxiliary manifolds," he said calmly, voice carrying over comms without commands bark. "Bypass the primary sync via secondary vents. Reroute 20% from inertial dampers. It'll hold." Guards paused, scales paling at the human touch on sacred controls. But the drone steadied mid-fall, platforms humming back to level. A captain blinked. Frills limp. "How? That sequence isn't doctrine." "Doctrine assumes clean failures," Jonah replied, stepping back as order restored. "This was induced, tampered flux signatures. Check the merchant logs for overrides." Lyris watched, her synaptic web registering the council's stunned hush. Vexer sputtered privately through links, ceremonial fool metals and logistics. But Kalis's eyes gleamed, projecting guild data already confirming Jonah's read. The human had juggled failure analysis, reroute calculus and crowd calm in seconds, feats her engineers rote-trained for cycles to approximate. She raised a gauntleted hand, silencing the recovering parade. "No purges. The implicated merchants stand suspended, not struck. Initiate forensic audit. Full synaptic trace on every drone manifest." Jonah's intervention preserved lives. His insight guides the probe. Kalis bowed deeply, frills vibrant. "Wisdom, Majesty. Practicality proven." Vexar seethed, but held silence as Lyris turned inward, her pulse to Jonah private. "You saw the sabotage pattern others missed." He met her gaze steadily, humble nod acknowledging without boast. "Just procedure, Your Majesty. Humans drill for variables." The parade realigned, but triumph soured hours later in the envoy's wing. Lyris received the alert mid-audit review. A visiting Korvath ambassador, scales oiled in false truce hues, slumped in his quarters, neural toxin foaming from gills. Assassins, shadowy figures vaporized by auto turrets, had breached under merchant guises, their blades etched with purest sigils. Whispers exploded across the palace nets. "Alliance poison. Purge the humans." Council links flooded her with demands for rumor-fueled executions. Merchants, guards, even Jonah's aides. Vexar pushed hardest. "Strike before the smear metastasizes, Empress." Lyris convened them in the shadowed war vault, holographic toxin reconstructions flickering like ghosts. "No." Yielding to panic invites the killer's victory. Advisors, compile evidence. Cross-reference assassin prints with purist ledgers, merchant bribes with Korvath docking logs. Flood the nets with facts, not blades. Let truth snaptic bind the court. Her voice cracked the formality just enough, steel laced with the personal stake she'd never voice. This alliance was her empire's vein, Jonah, its unexpected pulse. Vexar recoiled, scales dulling. Evidence over action, risky. But Kalis nodded, already tasking analysts. Jonah stood quiet, but Lyris caught his subtle scan of the vault's vents, anticipating echoes of the parade fail. As the council dispersed, another shadow loomed. Security faltered under heightened threats. Lyris summoned the palace commanders to her antechamber, their armored forms coiling in unease. "The assassination elevates all risks. We fortify with precision." Vexar lingered, probing. "Thalran commanders suffice, Majesty." She ignored him, turning to Jonah. Propriety cracked further, formal steps now bent to necessity. "Consort Hale, you will brief them. Your operational read on disruptions carries weight." The commanders stiffened, synaptic links buzzing skepticism. "A human? Briefing Thalran steel?" Jonah stepped forward without flourish, pulling up parade and assassin hollows side by side. Patterns link, flux tampering mirrors toxin dispersal vectors, multitask defenses, layer synaptic sweeps with manual patrols at odd intervals. Humans call it redundancy stacking. Catches induced anomalies rote scans miss. He sketched routes on the projection, weaving Thalran link strengths with human improvisation, staggered shifts for endurance, cross-domain checks blending fleet tactics with ground ops. Commanders leaned in, frills twitching as they tested his logic via links. One, Captain Silra, pulsed surprise. He multitasks 3 threat models simultaneously, without overload. Vexor watched from the edge, scales shifting from crimson to wary teal. Kalis, arriving late, murmured to an aide, "Research this redundancy." Human merchants speak of it in trade resilience, unheard efficiencies. Lyris observed it all, her own web thrumming with unbidden warmth. Jonah spoke not as superior but partner, humble in delivery, profound in yield. The commander saluted him crisply at session's end, one venturing, "Your counsel honors the Alliance envoy." As they filed out, Jonah caught her eye, a faint human smile cracking his reserve. "They'll adapt it better than I projected." She allowed a private link touch, formal barriers thinning. "You redefine expectation, Jonah." Empires notice. Outside, Korvath banners fluttered amid churning factions, but within the palace spines, logistics and law wove new synaptic steel. Trust deepened, not as ceremony but capability, human resolve proving the treaty's unyielding core. Yet whispers persisted. Purists plotted, assassins' shadows lengthened. The next breach loomed, demanding more than procedure. Minister Kyle's voice sliced through the throne chamber like a vibroblade, his synaptic tendrils pulsing crimson with feigned outrage. "By the edict of pure lineage, etched in the First Synod's neural codex 5 centuries past, no off-world flesh may taint the imperial succession. Your consort majesty, human, unbound by our synaptic weave, renders your union void for heirship. Exile him, or watch the empire fracture." Lyris sat unyielding on the spine throne, its biofibers humming against her skin, linking her to the court's collective unease. The assembled nobles shifted, their tendrils flickering, purists aglow with avarice, pragmatists dimmed by doubt. Jonah stood at her right, posture straight as a human alloy beam, his face a mask of quiet attention. She felt the weight of eyes on him, this outsider whose logistics had already steadied her grain vaults, not while Korvath fleets prowled the rim. "Speak your proof, minister," she commanded, voice silk over steel. "The edict binds succession to synaptic purity, yet our treaty demands alliance. Debate it here, now. Scholars, convene." The chamber erupted in synaptic flares as legal adepts linked minds, holographic codices blooming in the air like neural blooms. Kale pressed his tendrils lashing. "The statute is absolute. Human blood dilutes the weave. Your heirs would be synaptic ghosts, unfit to command." Murmurs swelled, but Lyris's gaze locked on Jonah, catching the subtle flex of his jaw. He met her eyes briefly, a nod of resolve passing unspoken. Trust, earned in shadowed ledgers, now tested in law's glare. As the debate tangled, clauses twisted, precedents synaptic linked, Lyris signaled the guards. "Enough words, let capability speak." She turned to Jonah. "Envoy Hale, the palace cohort trains in the outer yard. Demonstrate your consort's vow. Spar with them. Publicly." Jonah inclined his head. No flourish, just purpose. "As you command, Majesty." He descended the dais, guards parting like mist. Outside, under Korvath banners whipping in the wind, the yard thrummed with armored Thalran warriors, 2-meter frames rippling with synaptic-enhanced muscle, vibro lances humming. Nobles trailed, tendrils quivering curiosity. The lead guard, Captain Vran, loomed forward, lance leveled. "Human, this is no ceremony. We strike true." Jonah stripped to tunic and boots, drawing a lone synaptic blade, its edge singing faintly, and a paired gauntlet. No armor. The crowd encircled, whispers buzzing, soft skin, unlinked. He'll crumple. Vren lunged first, a blur of synaptic speed, lance thrusting for the shoulder. Jonah sidestepped, fluid as water, gauntlet snapping up to deflect. The impact rang, but he pivoted inside the guard's reach, elbow driving into Vren's midriff. The Thalran grunted, staggering, synaptic feedback sparking pain across his tendrils. Gasps rippled. Lyris watched from the balcony, her own tendrils tightening. Impossible, no link, yet he reads the weave's rhythm. 3 more guards circled, lances weaving a synaptic net, coordinated strikes born of shared neural pulses. Jonah didn't retreat. He ducked a high sweep, rolled under a low thrust, and rose driving fists into knees and throats. One lance grazed his arm, drawing blood. He ignored it, wrenching the weapon free midspin to parry. 2 more. Sweat beaded his skin, but his breath stayed even, eyes tracking patterns no lone mind should parse. A guard feinted left. Jonah anticipated, tripping him into another's path. Clatter of fallen steel. The crowd's tendrils flared amber, amazement bleeding through disdain. Vren rallied, blade humming for Jonah's neck. Jonah met it hilt to hilt, muscle straining but unyielding, then twisted, disarming with a wrist lock that sent the captain sprawling. He offered a hand up, voice steady. Good form. Tighten your off-balance recovery. Vren clasped it, rising with wide optic flares. You fight without the weave. How? Practice, Jonah said simply, wiping blood from his arm. No boast. The guards murmured respect. Lances lowered. Nobles exchanged glances. Lyris felt the shift, a synaptic ripple toward acceptance. Kale's tendrils darkened. Back in chamber, Kale surged. A parlor trick. Motion my exile order, Majesty. The statute demands it. Lyris rose, throne spines amplifying her presence. Denied. Scholars reinterpret. The edict guards purity, not alliance. Our treaty synaptic binds humanity's fleets to ours. Find the path. Kale bowed stiffly, but his eyes burned. Dismissed, the court dispersed amid buzzing links, whispers of the humans' drill already viral. That night, forged hollows leaked from rival spires. Jonah's face over schematics, captioned, Terran plot consort claims throne. Public terminals flared with outrage, purist mobs chanting outside palace spines. Lyris's advisors pulsed panic. Trust erodes, Majesty, the bond phrase. She summoned Jonah to her private synapse, biolights dimmed to indigo. They forge lies to unmake us. Kale's hand, no doubt. Jonah studied the hollow. Calm. Patterns matched their script. Sloppy timestamps, but damage spreads. His humility irked her less now. It anchored. I assign you command of Convoy Epsilon, she said. Tendrils firm, grain to the rim worlds, Corveth bait. Escort it. Succeed, and courts reckon your value. Fail. Political risk scorched her. Arming a consort publicly invited knives. Yet his gaze held no arrogance, only resolve. We'll deliver, he said. A flicker. Personal, not ceremonial. She nodded, propriety cracking just enough. Go. Synaptic steel to your spine. Dawn broke as Convoy Epsilon rumbled from the spines. 6 grav haulers groaning under grain silos, flanked by Jonah's mixed cohort. 20 Thalran guards, wary but linked to his lead runner. He rode point on a scout skimmer, eyes scanning ravines via human scopes. Fren at his side. Ambush likely, Commander. Korvath drones spotted. Patterned hits, Jonah murmured, multitasking, plotting routes on a wrist pad, signaling flanks, calibrating drone jammers. Hours blurred, Thalran guards flagged, synaptic fatigue dimming links, but Jonah pushed steady, enduring heat, recalibrating mid-stride. He doesn't tire. Vren pulsed privately. Weaves falter. He adapts. The ravine narrowed, trap sprung. Drones screamed from cliffs, plasma lancing haulers. Korvath raiders dropped, scaled brutes, pulse rifles barking. Guards linked defensively, lances forming a wall, but drones outflanked. A hauler buckled, grain spilling. Jonah barked, Vren! Hold core! Flanks peel left, faint the drone nest. He gunned the skimmer, drawing fire, then bailed, rolling into cover, rifle barking precise bursts. Pattern recognition lit his mind. Drone flight, loops, rote, predictable. He multitasked, firing, tossing EMP grenades improvised from guard packs, directing via runner. Second squad ravine lip, collapsing fire. Raiders swarmed. One pinned a guard. Jonah charged, hand-to-hand fury, dodging synaptic whips, breaking limbs with leveraged strikes. Blood slicked him, but resilience held, optimism fueling shouts. We've got this together, Vren marveled mid-fight, tendrils sinking tighter. He bonds us, reads our gaps. A raider drone exploded under Jonah's jury-rigged shot. They repelled the assault, raiders fleeing, haulers intact. Jonah slumped against a silo, bandaging wounds, sharing ration packs with exhausted guards. Vren gripped his shoulder. Commander, your weave is will alone. We research your kind now. Extraordinary. Word raced synaptic nets to palace. Lyris received the pulse mid-court. Convoy secured, human-led. Nobles fell silent. Kale's tendrils wilted. She rose. The consort proves utility. Law bends to alliance. Trust solidified, not ceremony, but steel forged, yet shadows lengthened. Purest blades honed sharper. Jonah's value demanded more than one victory. Lyris's decree hung in the synaptic chamber like a severed nerve, the noble's tendrils retracting in stunned compliance. She turned from the dais, her bio-armor humming faintly against her skin, when the first alert pulse lanced through the palace nexus, a cascade of fleet signatures blooming across the border. Neighboring empires, the Vexari Concord and the Silthar Enclave had mobilized. Warhulks detached from their moorings, vectors locked on Thalran supply lanes weakened by the domestic purges. Whispers erupted among the court. They scent blood. The human taints us. She silenced them with a glare, her voice a synaptic whip. Convene the War Council, now. The chamber emptied in a rustle of robes and quivering fronds, leaving her alone with the glowing threat map. Perceived weakness. The convoy crisis had been their probe, and now the vultures circled. Her empire's spine was synaptic precision, every citizen linked in unerring loyalty. But these rivals exploited the fracture. Her alliance with the human, Jonah Hale. Protocol demanded she crush the insult with full retaliatory volleys, but instinct, honed by cycles of intrigue, whispered restraint. Jonah Hale moved through the shadowed crypts beneath the palace, the air thick with the hum of sequestered data vaults. His human fingers danced over the alien console, eyes narrowing at the intercepted burst he'd snagged from a Vexari drone. Thalaran code was a labyrinth of synaptic fractals, but patterns emerged under his gaze, repetitions no rote decryptor caught, echoes of human cipher games from his old ops days. He multitasked without strain, one hand tracing overrides, the other sketching threat vectors on a makeshift pad, cross-referencing border pings with court whispers Kale had let slip. Fatigue, a distant hum. He'd pulled longer shifts in worse black sites. Decor cracked open, orders scrolled, sabotage nodes in the capital's nexus hubs. Subversion agents already embedded among the purest nobles, coordinated with a parley tomorrow. Lyris's diplomatic gambit to the Vexari envoy. Bastards, he muttered, pocketing the decrypt slate. Not just invasion. They aimed to gut the heart mid-negotiation. He straightened, mind already layering contingencies. Alert the queen discreetly. Bolster security without spooking her court. Humans endured the grind. This was just another puzzle. Lyris strode into the war vault, her advisor's tendrils flaring in agitation. Admiral Vren pulsed fleet diagnostics. Majesty, Vexari dreadnoughts breach the outer veil. Silthar skirmishers flank our convoys. Strike now, obliterate their vanguard, affirm dominance. Kale, his purest barbs retracting under her prior victory, nodded vigorously. The human's convoy stunt buys time, nothing more. Purge the weakness at root. She halted them mid-pulse, her presence a synaptic anchor. No. Full strike invites escalation. Our lines are stretched. Eyes on the hologrid, she integrated Jonah's prior feats. The convoy reroute, his uncomplaining vigilance through the night. Targeted diplomacy. Parley the Vexari envoy at dawn. Expose their feint. Surgical countermeasures. Isolate subversion cells. Sever their nexus feeds. Murmurs rippled. Unorthodox. Risky. Vren's fronds drooped. And if they press? Protocol demands. Protocol serves the Empire, Lyris cut in, voice edged with cracking formality. A synaptic ping arrived. Jonah's decrypt, routed through secure channels. She absorbed it in a blink. Sabotage plots. Parley trap. Her tendrils tightened. The consort confirms it. Prepare the parley chamber. Double guards. Dawn bled through the palace spires as Lyris entered the parley hall. Jonah at her flank per her unspoken nod. The Vexari envoy, a hulking figure of chitin and glowing vents, waited with its retinue, air thick with false civility. Empress, it rasped through the translator lattice. Vents hissing steam. Your domestic variances concern the Concord. Mobilization is mere precaution. Lies pulsed beneath. Jonah felt it in the envoy's subtle vents flaring. The guard's microshifts tells any field op red cold. Lyris met its gaze, regal poise unbroken. Precaution against shadows you cast, cease your hulks, or face precision reprisal. Terms flowed. Shared lanes, non-aggression pacts. The envoy's vents pulsed agreement, tendrils of its own mimicking Thal-Rend courtesy. But Jonah's pattern sense spiked. Retinue member's cloak twitched wrong, the synaptic disruptor glinting beneath. Chaos erupted. The assailant lunged from the envoy's shadow, blade arcing for Lyris's throat. Purest toxin, Vexari forged. Time slowed for Jonah. He surged forward, body coiling on pure reflex. His shoulder slammed the attacker mid-leap, momentum carrying them both crashing into a pillar. Pain bloomed. Thal-Rend stone bit deep, but he rolled, drawing his ceremonial sword in a fluid arc. The blade sang free, parrying a second strike as palace guards swarmed. The assailants snarled, fronds whipping venom, but Jonah pressed. Feint high, thrust low, disarming with a twist honed from endless drills. Guards pinned it, blood slicked the floor. Lyris stood untouched, her bio-armor flaring defensive spines. The envoy recoiled, vents sealing in shock. Treachery not ours, it vented. But her eyes bored through. Your orders say otherwise. Parley ends. Your hulks withdraw, or we trace every subversion thread. The hall buzzed with synaptic outrage. Nobles arriving via emergency pulses witnessed the humans intercept. Raw physicality no Thal-Rend matched, enduring the clash without falter. She turned to the assembly, voice thundering. Ancient statute be damned, this alliance saves us. The consort intercepts death, where your protocols blind you. Gasps rippled. The statute forbade off-worlders in security roles. Purest law etched in synaptic stone. Kale's tendrils spasmed. Majesty, the court. Convene emergency legal council, Lyris commanded. Formality fracturing into steel resolve. Amend the statute. Secure legitimacy now. Her gaze met Jonah's, bloodied but steady, a flicker of personal gratitude piercing the regal mask. He'd bridged crisis with action, not bluster. Human endurance weaving into her web. As the council pulsed to life, nobles filing in with holographic law tomes, Lyris drew Jonah aside amid the vaulted arches. You read the decrypt. Intercepted doom. Why not boast? Her tendrils brushed his arm, intimate, probing. He wiped blade clean. Humble shrug unmarred by triumph. Boasting blinds. Puzzle fit. I solved it. Your countermeasures make it stick. No arrogance, just quiet competence. Adaptability turning alien code to shield. Fren approached. Fronds lowered in rare deference. Consort your blade work. Thal-Rend nerves fire once. You chained strikes. Amazement crept in, protocols bending. Lyris silenced further probes. He heads palace security through this. Formalize it. Political cost loomed. Purists would howl. But necessity trumped. Kale wilted further, researching human archives on a side slate. Endurance myths, verified. Whispers spread. The human's feats accumulated, ordinary to him. The legal council convened under her gaze, fractious tendrils debating amendments. Jonah stood sentinel, multitasking. Scanning entrant biometrics, cross-patching nexus feeds for subversion pings, even sharing a quiet nod with Fren on hull weak points. Lyris watched, strength unyielding. As the vote tipped, statute challenged, alliance etched legitimate. Shadows retreated, but Jonah's value burned brighter. Not consort, but partner. Yet as the parley envoy slunk away under guard, a final decrypt ping arrived. Silthar faint deeper, purest blade still honing. Trust forged in blood demanded more. Explosions ripped through the capital's outer wards, the thunderous bloom of disruptor fire blooming across Lyris's tactical holoscreen like venomous flowers. She straightened in the command nexus, her synaptic tendrils flaring with cold precision as reports flooded in. Hardliner purists breaching the perimeter, Silthar proxies cloaked in stolen merchant codes slamming the flanks. Seal the core vaults, she commanded, voice a blade of imperial steel, no evacuation. Divert all treaty convoys to fortified relays. The provinces starve without them. Her advisors recoiled, frills quivering in shock. Evacuation was protocol, the Empress preserved above all else. But Lyris's gaze locked on the flickering grid, where supply lines snaked like lifelines to the outer worlds now bound by the human treaty. Jonah Hale's people had pledged those cargoes, grains, alloys, the mundane miracles that kept her empire breathing. To flee now would doom them, unraveling the fragile pact before it could root. A shadow fell across the Nexus threshold. Jonah, already armored in hybrid plate, his human frame taut with focus. No flourish, no plea, just the quiet resolve she'd come to recognize, forged in their shared skirmishes. Inner gates buckling, he said, voice level amid the sirens. Palace guards are elite but rigid. I've rallied the merchant militia. Traders who know the underpasses. Let me hold it. Lyris's tendrils pulsed, weighing him. The human consort, ceremonial in title, had proven no ornament. Yet this, leading her forces, purist blades would call it blasphemy. Silthar whispers poison, you presume much, envoy hail. His eyes met hers, steady, unyielding, not presumption. Partnership. Your guards hold the line. My militia flanks through the vents. Hybrid strike, Thalran precision with human improv. She nodded once. Sharp. Go. Fail, and the treaty dies with the gate. Jonah vanished into the corridors, his boots echoing like a heartbeat. Lyris turned back to the hollow, synaptic links firing orders, reroute shield emitters, lock down provincial feeds. Alarms wailed as the first purist phalanx hammered the inner gate, their bioforged lances shearing through merchant barricades. From the Nexus feed, she watched Jonah assemble his patchwork force. 24 palace guards in gleaming synaptic harnesses, shoulders rigid with drilled fealty, and thrice that in ragtag militia, scaled traders clutching pulse rifles and cargo haulers, their frills flat with fear. Guards, diamond formation, lock the parapets, Jonah directed, his translator implant humming. He didn't shout, his words cut clean, weaving Thalran cant with clipped human efficiency. The guards snapped into position, synaptic pulses sinking their shields into an unbreakable web. But the purists adapted, Silthar drones swarming overhead, lancing plasma that forced the line to contract. Jonah multitasked without strain, scanning drone patterns on a wrist pad while signaling the militia. Vent teams, now, crawl the undergrid, emerge at grid 9, rig those hauler charges. Concussive, not lethal. Flush him into the kill box. The traders blinked, frills flickering confusion. Thalran doctrine shunned improv. Purity demanded rote perfection. Yet they moved, hauling jury-rigged packs from their sleds, human-taught tricks from treaty drills, fuses timed by Jonah's relentless practice runs. Lyris tracked it all, her nexus thrumming with feeds. The human juggled command feeds, guard syncs, militia chatter, even pinging her with tactical overlays, patterns she hadn't seen, connecting Silthar drone arcs to purest advance vectors. Endurance marked him. Hours of prior parlays without falter. Now this, sweat beading his brow but pace unbroken. Her own captains flagged fatigue after such loads, yet Jonah layered it naturally, like breathing. The coup crested. Purists surged the gate, lances coring the shields, militia erupted from vents. Traders detonating charges in perfect rhythm, blasting purists into the open. Guards pivoted seamlessly, synaptic fire reaping the exposed. Jonah was everywhere, directing fire, patching a wounded guard's harness with a field strip from his belt, reading the purist commander's frill twitch for the next feint. A Silthar assassin drone broke through, zeroing on the breach. It dove for Lyris's position. Proxies had pierced the Nexus outer shell. She drew her scepter blade, tendrils coiling for synaptic burst, but the drone was adaptive, shields modulating. Jonah was there in a blur, vaulting from the gate line via emergency tram. He tackled the platform mid-air, human muscle slamming it down. No superhuman leap, just raw adaptability, twisting mid-fall to jam a militia spike into its core. Sparks flew, it detonated short shrapnel grazing his side. He rose, blood seeping, and fired the killing shot. Nexus secure, Your Majesty. Gate holds. Lyris stepped forward, her hand steadying him, formality cracking into something raw. You read the proxy weave. Thalran augurs missed it. Patterns connect across domains, he said simply, staunching the wound without wince. Your syncs gave the edge. We repel together. The battle synchronized then, Lyris's political counters unspooling via synaptic broadcasts, exposing purist ties to Silthar ledgers, rallying loyalists in the provinces. Jonah's hybrid force crushed the remnants, merchants and guards bonding in the fray, shared grins across frills and flesh. Hardliners shattered, proxies routed, their feint exposed. Dawn crested the spires as Lyris convened the court in the grand vault, purist banners trampled underfoot. Her tendrils gleamed, voice resonant. The Empire endures, not by purity's blade, but alliance's forge. I proclaim the inclusive charter, human treaty enshrined, provinces secured. Jonah hail, risen in valor I name high consort. Succession shields now bind our lines, Thalran and human, intertwined. Gasps rippled, frills stiffened. Purist holdouts sneered, but merchants nodded. Guards stood taller. Jonah at her side, humble in stance, offered no boast, merely a nod to the assembly. Strength in union. Acceptance bloomed unevenly. Captains who drilled beside him saluted fully now, researching human histories in hushed terminals, endurance tales from Terran wars, adaptability in their endless adaptations. A merchant frill queen approached post-proclamation, scales shimmering respect. Your consort. He layered commands as we layer cargoes. We dismissed humans as fragile traders. No more. Lyris felt it too. The shift. She'd ruled alone, divine right her scepter. Yet Jonah's quiet feats peeled back her assumptions, not lesser, but complementary. His resilience amid wounds, the emotional red that turned rigid guards to fluid allies, the creativity fusing their ways. She chose him publicly. Political fractures be damned, costly yes, but true power. In private alcove later, as medics sealed his gash, she touched his shoulder, propriety fully cracked. You could have claimed glory, high consort. He smiled faintly. Eyes warm. Glories shared. Your orders saved the provinces. We build from here. Court whispers turned to alliances. Governance wove them into public life, joint audiences, shared strategies. Lyris retained her throne's weight, but Jonah's counsel balanced it, their partnership a beacon. Trust, forged in blood and breach, now anchored the empire. She was born to rule, and learned that true power lay in finding an equal.